Travel broadens the mind, Pedro Casillas. Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests, they say travel broadens the mind. And in my case, I totally agree with that. And this evening, I'd like to share with you my experiences of travelling around South America some time ago. There I was, arriving in a place called Foz do Iguaçu, which is on the border between Paraguay, Argentina and Brazil. The town is not much to look at, but just outside the town is one of the wonders of the world. You walk through this corridor, and there in front of you, out of nowhere, comes a mass of green. And from that mass of green is a cascade of water like I've never seen before. These are the famous Foz do Iguaçu waterfalls. And to give you some idea of just how large these are, they make Niagara Falls look like a dripping tap. That's how big they are. But I contrasted this on my journey. There's a bridge that links Paraguay with Argentina and Brazil. And you go across this bridge, and it is the worst polluted traffic jam I have ever seen. Lorries and trucks and buses spewing out pollution. And it got me thinking about the world I lived in. I said travel broadens the mind. It really got me thinking about green issues. On one hand, we had all this beautiful greenery, all the loveliness of the forest, the natural beauty of the waterfalls. And on the other hand, all this pollution. And it got me thinking, what am I doing? What are we doing to protect the planet that we live on? Now, I don't claim to have made a huge difference that day, but a couple of weeks ago I got speaking to a Brazilian, and he was telling me how much Brazil has changed in its policies towards the jungle, and how they are cleaning up their act. What it made me think was that my travelling, millions of people travelling, make a difference. That was my first lesson on that epic journey that I undertook. My second made me confront my prejudice and prejudgment of things and people when I entered into Paraguay. The town I entered in is called Puerto del Este, and this town is a free market place. You could buy literally anything. You go down the high street, any type of watch that you could care to name, they were selling it. And when I walked into a store and had a chat with the gentleman who was running the store, I didn't understand a word he was saying to me. And then suddenly he picked up this little device, stuck it in his ear, and he was speaking perfect English to me. And I thought, he's got a babel fish. And for those of you who are looking down that way, not understanding what a babel fish is, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's the universal translator. And he was translating and speaking to me in perfect English. And he said, we will sell anything at any price. And he rolled up his sleeve of his arm, watches, all the way up his arm. Make me an offer, he said. We take any money. If it looks like money, we buy it. But the thing that struck me about this gentleman was that he was a Korean. Of Paraguay. And I asked him, where'd you come from? He said, we're from Korea. And this is where it got me thinking about my own perceptions and prejudices about assuming that people come from a certain place. In the 1950s, after the Korean War, many Koreans left Korea looking for a better life, and they heard that there were opportunities to be had in Paraguay, and that's where they ended up. They took whole families, and they live there. They speak Guarani, which is the language in Paraguay. They speak Spanish, and so on. Quite extraordinary. And it got me thinking about my own life and how I got to be in London. My mother's Irish, my father's Spanish. By economic and political circumstances, they ended up in London, and I'm a product of that. But how many people come up to me and say, when did you learn to speak English, Pedro? And I was doing the same back to this gentleman. And it really got into my head is I should not judge a person by what I see them, to think a bit more deeply. My third lesson was to appreciate this country and, for all its faults, our political system. Because when I arrived in Asunción, which is the capital city of Paraguay, it was run at that time by a military dictatorship under the Stroessner government. Now, the Stroessner government was one of the most brutal military dictatorships, in power for more than 30 years. Stroessner himself was part German descent, had close links with Nazi Germany, and paid host to one Joseph Mengele. Walking round the centre of Asunción, you got a sense of this is not a nice place to live. In the middle of the squares, they had these big flashing neon signs saying peace, work, and a good life with the Stroessner government. As long as you towed the party line, things were good for you. But apart from that, things were not. It was almost like you were in a time loop in Asunción. But they had humour too. I was in a restaurant with an Australian. We were travelling together, and they chatted English. And a scene out of Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark appeared. This figure came out of the shadows. Conk, conk, conk. Full length, leather coat, trilby hat, monocle, cane, and said to us, "You speak English, yeah?" And we said, "Yes." "Ah, very good," and walked off. In conclusion, fellow Toastmasters and welcome guests, I said at the outset, travel broadens the mind. It opened my mind up to the world I live in, my prejudice, and also to appreciate the fact that we live in a democracy. I urge you, if you haven't travelled, or even if you have travelled, book the next trip, for it will change you.